Thank you very much. And it's definitely quite surreal knowing that I'm coming into, it's very intimate, I suppose, that we're coming into your ears right now. But I'm just going to talk like this as if I normally would be talking. So the book is called Z.E.R.O, Zero Paid Media is the New Marketing Model. It is under 140 characters, so it's a good tweet, if you will. And it kind of says, it is what it says, and it says what it means. And it's pretty provocative to be launching a book called Z.E.R.O at the Festival of Media. So talk about embracing your inner heresy. We are kickstarting it. This is the actual global launch of the book in terms of the idea and the Kickstarter campaign. And I am going to tell you now that the first person here today that invests in the book, I will buy you a beer tonight at 6:30 at the Fairmont Hotel. So that's pretty ballsy as well. Well, I'll buy you a beer as well. You've already invested. Thank you. It's pretty ballsy to already offer to buy you a beer and to say invest in the book when you don't even know what it's about. So look, before you start throwing rotten tomatoes at me for the fact that I'm writing a book about zero paid media, the new marketing model, and to show you how nervous I am, I actually have 2 name tags just in case this doesn't go well. So I will be Jason Jaffe if this thing doesn't work out, and Joseph Jaffe if it does. You're not going to throw tomatoes at us, because part of this message of Z.E.R.O is to embrace your inner heretic, to embrace that heresy, to almost talk about the thing that you fear the most, that scares you the most, and then diversify your portfolio and figure out a smarter way to invest. Not because you have to, but because you can. This vision of moving from being media dependent to media discerning is very real, and we're going to walk you through it. Now, what are my credentials? Personally, I've written 3 books. I've written a book called Life After the 30-Second Spot, a book called Join the Conversation, and a book called Flip the Funnel. You know, I'm not a futurist, but I'm pretty good at being able to predict where the puck is going to be.
Yeah, and I hired Joseph Jaffe when I worked at the Coca-Cola company, and I was trying to launch integrated marketing communications as the way we did marketing at Coke, which was a long, arduous, slow and painful process. And Joe helped along the way, and he helped so well that when I moved to Anheuser-Busch InBev, where I became the architect of integrated marketing and the digital revolution and so on and so forth, I brought Joe along, and again, it was a good collaboration that we had. The real journey, though, there's really 2 journeys. So there's a professional journey that all sort of talks about how these companies evolved, and the companies, you know, the company I worked for last, AB-InBev, evolved quite a lot. When I started, 0.1% was spent on search. When I left, about 20% was spent in digital. So it was quite a transformative thing in 3 years. But me personally, I also went through a personal sort of transition over those years, and he was very much responsible for that. When I joined the Coca-Cola company in Atlanta, I'd worked in Japan and Germany before that. In Japan, in 2001, I had a mobile phone that could stream CNN. And everybody was in awe of that. And so obviously now that is nothing really special, but in 2001 that was pretty special. So I was very intrigued by digital, but I wasn't really sort of on board yet. Joseph sort of kicking and screaming brought me on board. And now I live my life, as I always say, I live my life in full disclosure.
I mean, the most dangerous client is one that knows as much, if not more, than his actual agency. And the good news, I suppose, is that there aren't that many brand marketers that know as much or more than the agency. But Maarten was one of them. When he got engaged, I was actually really pissed with him because he didn't call me to tell me personally. And he said, "What are you talking about? It's on Facebook." And suddenly the student became the teacher. But really it brings up a very important point here, which is if you want to understand change, you have to live it. You can't read about the disruptive forces of change in a book. Maybe our book, but other than that, seriously, you can't read about it in a book. You have to live it. And Maarten and I have done that together.
Yeah.
So maybe it's time now to kind of go back to the future. Let me go back to life after the 30-second spot, because this chapter is not complete. A lot of people came up to me and they said, "Oh, you wrote Death of the 30-Second Spot." And I said, "You never read my book." They said, "How do you know?" And I said, "Because the book wasn't about the death of the 30-second spot. It was the fact that we don't need to go back to the same traditional television, radio, and print at the time. There were all these bold new approaches. I wrote about in 2005, one of those bold new approaches was what I called consumer-generated content. This is before YouTube existed. I wrote another approach called communal marketing, which became known as social media. So the 30-second spot didn't die, we know that. But there are other problems. And I don't think anyone here would debate or argue about the fact that it is becoming harder and harder to break through the clutter, to be relevant. Efficiency is not a luxury anymore. I mean, it's absolutely a necessity. So we wanted to go back and say, wait a second, maybe, just maybe, it is time to kind of take the bull by the horns and really, attack this disruptive change head on. It is hard right now to be in our business. It is not easy, and it's getting harder. So what are you going to do? Are you going to hide? Are you going to retreat into your shell? Are you going to stick your head into the sand? Rupert Murdoch, I was hoping this digital thing would just go away. Or are you going to embrace this head on?
And, it is hard. And advertisers, clients are not stupid. They're not dumb. They know that things have changed, and they know that they need to change along as well. But at the same time, they are caught in a rat race, in a model, in a structure that maybe doesn't advocate that change right away. And that's what makes the whole change process so hard. That is why it's going sometimes so slow. Talent and talent structure, infrastructure within the agency, resources allocated to certain responsibilities, tenure issues, compensation, how we evaluate and compensate our people or the partners like agencies and what have you that we work with. All of that potentially stands in the way of the change that is really needed to go into this better and new and different approach that we're advocating.
Yeah, I always loved the Bob Garfield quote. He said, the agency business is full of smart people making dumb decisions. And the fact is, we are all super smart. But why are our organizations lagging? Why do we resist change? Yeah. Culturally, organizationally, why are we not changing quick enough? And I think we all recognize that urgency, that it is time to change. And tenure is an important one. We don't have enough opportunity as executives to implement what I call long-term sales initiatives. We don't have the ability to see the fruits of our labor. I mean, I always talk about the fact that the agency behind M&Ms, the characters, they should be getting residuals and royalties. And that goes to the heart of procurement, and it goes to the heart of being able to get paid for not just big ideas, but big ideas that return big returns, long after the brand has fired the agency and moved on. So we've tackled all of that. When the going gets tough, as they say, the tough gets going. Now is the time for rapid prototyping, for experimentation, for taking risks, for being prepared to fail, for acting and thinking like startups. Now is the time to do something about it, because we believe that a perfect storm is coming.
Yeah, and I think this is something that we've talked about a lot. There's a number of things that I mentioned just a little bit earlier that we've talked about individually, right? We've talked about the fact that traditional media is slowly but surely pricing itself out of the market by raising prices time and again, right? Television rates are going from 7 to 40% in some markets. At the same time, they're delivering less and less reach, but even more potentially dangerous, less and less relevance. And you can't, that's just one example. The whole rat race of the Wall Street pressure, right? Every month, every quarter, every 12 months going. How does that impact your business and your outlook on your business? So what we're saying is there's not one bullet, there's not one smoking gun, but there's a whole raft of different things that are all sort of now coming together in this perfect storm moment that actually have a real impact, and now is the time to really start acting. We've known about some of these individual things before. They are now all coming together in this big, perfect maelstrom, perfect storm, whatever you want to call it. And what we do in the book is we've sort of grouped them together. We talk about the economic pressures and issues. We talk about the business pressure and issues. We talk about the media pressure and issues, the consumer and the creative pressure and issues. And all of these things combined sort of clearly stare in the face, in your face and say, you can't wait any longer. You've got to do at least something, and that's what we'll talk about.
Right, I mean, any one of these forces by itself could probably destabilize the model, might be responsible for the bottom falling out. You take the consumer one. One thing that I wrote in one of my books was production is the new consumption. The internet didn't cannibalize television, nor did the DVR or TiVo. But content creation, the maker movement, when you are actively leaning forward and creating content and editing content, you are consuming that content and you are not consuming other people's content. So that is the ultimate cannibalistic type of, and it's fully immersive and submissive and engaging. And on the creative side, people always say the problem is not, the problem is not advertising, it's bad advertising. Well, what happens when there's too much bad advertising? Where can the good advertising go? How can the good advertising ever break through? Well, you stick it on YouTube. And what is the cost? What is the paid media cost of putting something on YouTube?
I think that number is 0.
Well, you could argue that certainly. There's no doubt that technology is the accelerant. Why is all of this happening? Why is it all coming together now? It's because of technology. And whether you like it or not, that ship has sailed. Digital, social, mobile, solo-mo, emerging, Google Glass. Just when we think we've figured it out, something else comes along and turns everything on its head. So the stuff is not going away. And we think that we've come up with a philosophy, an organizing framework that actually says, now let's just get the heresy out. In a perfect world, your paid media budget would be 0. You would have enough customers. You would have enough word of mouth. You would have enough advocacy. You would have enough referrals. Why on earth would you need to go and conquest and attract and woo perfect strangers when you have enough revenue incumbent built into the model? So, here's the first bit of good news, I suppose. Z.E.R.O is an acronym. So it stands for Zealots, Entrepreneurship, Retention, and Owned Assets. Let me go back now and take you through that in just a little bit more detail. Zealots is advocacy. You've got enough fans, enough influencers that are your customers. Who is the most credible, influential salesperson in your entire organization? It's not the loud-mouthed, foul-mouthed, basement-dwelling, disheveled, living at mom-and-pop blogger. And it's not your slick, greasy snake oil salesman. It's your customer. So advocacy is the first one. The second one is entrepreneurship. The ability to build direct relationships, not just with the startup community, but also with your customers. Become a service brand. Become a utility brand. Offer direct engagement and direct contact with your customers on a daily basis. The third is customer centricity. Customer experience, customer service. The ability truly to become a service brand. Apple is a service brand. I mean, you could argue that they really aren't in the technology business or the product business at all. When you walk into an Apple store, what you experience is a service and a complete, holistic, consuming, superior human-to-human, or what I call non-media contact. And then finally, we have owned assets.
Yes, so this is something that we want to sort of start building into the conversation and into the lingo, if you like. We've all heard of paid, earned, and owned media. And obviously, as we started working with this whole idea of Z.E.R.O, paid, owned, earned media still sounds like it is something that you have to sort of invest in to get. And we want to really get into the mindset of, now these are actually owned assets. Your packaging is assets. Your in-store is assets. Your people on the phone or at the Twitter desk or whatever, the war rooms, they're assets. When I was at Coca-Cola in Germany, we actually launched a presentation to help build partnerships with other companies, and we called ourselves the Coca-Cola Media Company. And we actually put numbers, so reach, frequency, and cost numbers on the various pieces of assets that we had that we could make available to others that helped us then to sort of do barters and things like that. So that's a really different way of thinking in terms of owned. It doesn't have to be media. It should really be much broader than that, and it's owned assets. And I think that's part of the transformation that we're advocating. All right, so third part of the book, which I think to me was probably one of the most important parts, is a lot of books, they sort of say, here's the problem, here's why you're all stupid, here's why you need to change, good luck. And we didn't want to do that. We really wanted to have, in the third part of the book, some real practical advice of things that advertisers can do to really start the process of change. We're not advocating sort of throw everything away and start with a clean slate. It is impossible. You'll fail. The company won't allow it. It is too risky. It just won't work. But what we are saying is there are a couple of things that you could start doing, and then you will see the change starting to happen, and then you can add more stuff as you go along. That's pretty much the model that I've followed in the past as well. So we have a 10-point action plan of practical things that you can actually do to address some of these issues. Culture and talent. So what can you do to start changing the organization in terms of culture and talent? Some very practical how-to things that you could do there. Same for tenure and career planning, for compensation, for budget setting, and for measurement.
Yeah, I mean, even in budget setting and measurement, we talk about medium-term metrics to kind of help us triangulate between short-term metrics and long-term lifetime value of the customer. What you'll notice is they start very cultural and organizational, and then they get into a strategic and a tactical roadmap or an action plan. You know, and as Maarten said, you don't have to do everything, but we think that there are some very right, and we really are quite specific in terms of ideas, even under budget setting, being able to create speculative budgets, contingency budgets, you know, just like Chuck Fruit did during his time with Coke and Anheuser-Busch, being able to set aside innovation budgets. Now is the time to start experimenting. So, you know, I didn't want anyone to throw rotten tomatoes at me. I started off by saying zero paid media as the new marketing model. I said, wait a second, zero is an acronym, but just like life after the 30-second spot, there was a way out, which is to embrace a whole host of possibilities. The way out here is to say, guess what? The world is not perfect. So it's not going away anytime soon, but I'll be damned if I'm going to sit on my ass and wait for this thing to pass, because it may not pass. So do something about it, be proactive, recognize that the world is imperfect. We are largely a part of making it imperfect. That doesn't mean that we can't outmaneuver our competitors by being able to embrace change. So, you know, to use the quote, you've got to ask yourself this question: do you feel lucky? Do you think you can wait it out? Do you think it will pass you by? What if we're right and what if we're wrong? Well, if we're wrong, you bought a book. You invested in a Kickstarter campaign. You went and triangulated or diversified your portfolio. You were able to at least expand your palette, the breadth and the depth of that palette, of those consumer connections, of your entire program. You were able to hedge your bets. But if we're right, well, I mean, do I even need to go into what the possibilities are in terms of saying this thing just hit us like a ton of bricks? And we've gone through that already. We've gone through it with digital, right? The bubble burst. We thought the thing was done, and it came back, and boy, oh boy, did it come back with a vengeance. We took our eye off the prize because we were worried about the money and the investment side of it, and consumers were oblivious, and they continued to embrace and adopt as well. So we are putting our money where our mouths are, or we're asking you to put your money where our mouths are, in a sense. We are living new marketing, a concept I came up with a while ago. Use new marketing to prove new marketing. We want the book to become its own case study. So what we're doing is we're demonstrating how it cost us absolutely nothing to publish this book. Why? Because we went out to our fans, our community, the people that have read my books, my blog,
own assets.
Our own assets. We're using Twitter and Facebook and all of our hubs as well. And we're asking you to support this campaign. How are we doing it? We've got a bunch of experiential rewards. We've named them after famous misers because this is about zero at the end of the day. So for as little as $12, you can get yourself a digital copy, or you can get 10 autographed books and an in-person keynote. There are only 2 available for $10,000. But in all honesty, this is an amazing experiment for us. We're witnessing total strangers, by the way, total strangers are already supporting this book. We've also witnessed, even though, for example, 3 autographed copies, the Mr. Burns, and a plug in the book, even though it's $67, some people are giving 81 or 87. So that's an interesting experiment as well. So those are our rewards and what they look like. In terms of blowing us away, I think I know everything. I know absolutely jack. We have not even launched this campaign yet. You are the first audience to know about this campaign. We already have $8,700, pretty much $8,700, $8,500 at the time. We don't know how, but people are already embracing the content. Compete. And by the way, TNS Media, both Cantor Media companies who are sponsors of this, maybe coincidentally, maybe not, have already pledged. In fact, I don't know if is Tim Isaac here? So Tim and I actually met on the train, and he's already supported the book. Thank you, Tim. So he works at TNS, so I'm giving you a plug there as well. So, you know, be a part of this. Join this. You know, witness a little bit of history in the making, which is to support this idea that in a perfect world, your paid media budget would, in fact, be zero.
Yep.
That's how to contact us. I'm going to take some questions. Maarten and I will take some questions. We've got about 5 minutes left. Challenge us if you like. And I'm going to make one final little call to action for you. The first person to actually back our project right now, I will buy you a beer at 6:30 and we can brainstorm for 30 minutes. So thank you guys, and certainly we'd love to take some questions from you.
If we can.
So do we have some questions? Any questions?
All right,
So
apparently you need to take your headphones off for the
Pushback,
questions.
agreements.
So
Want us to expand on anything?
obviously the copy on your desk is yours. That's the first chapter we're giving away today, so you can take that with you and then maybe decide if you want to buy the rest.
Have I stunned you into silence? Do I have to go to my plants? Are there really no questions? All right, well listen, I'm looking at my phone. If anyone supports the project, I'll buy you a beer, and enjoy the rest of your event, and good luck.
Thanks.